Hi, everybody.
Yeah, we were going to have a moderator who was going to ask us questions. So we don't kind of have that now. So what we're just going to make it up as we go. I hope that's okay. But we're going to start with the reason why this committee got put together in the first place. So do you want to share your piece that you shared backstage?
All right, everybody. So I guess the reason that this committee got put together in the first place, actually, I think I want to talk about the greater reason in general, is that any community is going to have disputes. They're going to have disagreements. They're going to have differences on what people's opinions of their boundaries are, what they're comfortable with, and even things like, did somebody get paid when they were supposed to? Were contracts, fulfilled when they were supposed to, etc. And the entire idea is that as anarchists, we do not want to have to seek out a government solution for solving these problems. But we don't necessarily have a good model for how to do it if we don't use government. And right now, one of the most common ways that people try to solve said disputes is by going online and calling each other out. And sometimes it can be very toxic and it can be very nasty. And it isn't necessarily the most productive way to solve a problem or to find a good win-win solution to resolve an issue. And so this committee kind of became formed over the past year with each of us having different things that we specialize in terms of conflicts and disputes and differences of opinion, and ways in which people might need moderation or mediation or help. And for us to be able to bring that to the community so that in the event that you have some kind of dispute with someone, instead of calling each other out on the internet or otherwise creating drama that doesn't necessarily result in a resolution, we'd like to be here to help facilitate resolution and facilitate actually peaceful conclusions to these problems. So I'd like to say I think that would be a good description of how this all started. Yeah, okay, we're all in agreement. See, look at this, we can all agree.
Well, first thing that I would like to share is that most of the time, if someone is triggering you for some reason, most likely it's because you have some sort of discordance inside of yourself, some sort of irritation or upset, some wounding. And what's happening is that wounding is sitting in your field as a sort of separated, isolated, wound that is there, dormant. Then, when a like vibration appears in the field around you, this kicks off. And so the person that you really have a dispute with or irritated with is not really the core of it. The core of it is deep in your field where that wounding lies. And then all your defenses kick off and you end up projecting on that person because it reminds you of your father or your mother or of when you're a very young child. When you're very young and all your centers are open, your subconscious, unconscious mind is going through a complete programming in those first 7 years. And Johnny can tell you more about how that works as well. But essentially, that then sets in motion your irritations and upsets and creates all the program scripts that run your perceptions. So when you get highly triggered, irritated, angry, frustrated, usually there's a finger pointing out to someone, but then if you look carefully, there's three fingers pointing back at yourself. The first resolution that needs to happen is internally within yourself, and to use it as an investigation to explore what's this really about, what's inside of me that this person is reminding me of that I'm hurt from my background or I have some unmet needs. So that's my first throw into the center here about dealing with irritations and upsets and frustrations and anger.
I just realized that I don't think we introduced ourselves. They know who we are. You guys all know who we are? Does anybody not know who we are? Maybe we should do 2 minutes. Yeah, 2 minutes or something.
Worthwhile to at least describe what our focus is on this.
Yeah, of course.
Committee and everything else.
Agreed. Thanks, Avens. I'm Johnny Dupre. I am a psychosocial coach and trainer, and I specialize in hypnosis and everything having to do with the unconscious mind. And so my specialty is in that bridge between what happens in your own inner world, your psychology, and how that is impacted by the sociology, your spheres of influence. So that's sort of my field.
Luis Fernando Mrs. I am a leadership development consultant, and I do something of what he does with leaders. And I also am, I guess, a professional anarchist. We do a lot of changes in Texas locally through our activism. and a peaceful parent.
I'm Becca Sagani. I'm author of the book, Venus and Her Lover, Transforming Myth, Sexuality, and Ourselves. So because of the work with this multimedia Tantric Art Project, I've done a multi-decade study on relationship, both between man and woman or any couple, man, woman. And because of my sense of responsibility in this society, I've been a community activist for several decades. And what I always found was that what sunk us was not the very formidable adversaries we had, whether they were corporate or government or whatever, but our own internal conflicts. So last year, in the great wisdom of the organizers of Anarchapulco, invited me into this idea of this committee because Anarchapulco, like every single organization, also had some internal conflicts, and they wished to solve them in transparent ways. So I really want to salute the wisdom of this group, like any group, made up of human beings. And so that's why I'm here.
So my name is Avens O'Brien, and about an hour ago I gave a speech up here, so at 10:30 this morning actually. And where I come from is, I'm a second-generation libertarian, and I do all sorts of liberty and anarchy activism, but I've also been coming to Anarchapulco for 5 years. And I'm someone who has been very involved not just in Anarchapulco's community, but the greater libertarian community in general. And I find that it's funny, I don't actually have any kind of educational background in mediation or even professional background in it. But what I found is that my mother would say it's because I'm a Libra, but I don't actually believe all that shit. The fact is, I really appreciate seeing all sides of an issue and trying to be a mediative voice when I see two people having conflict. I dislike conflict, and I like to see it resolved. So I tend to be someone who will say, tell me your problem, tell me your problem. And because I'm someone who's been involved in this community for so long, I deeply care about the quality of this community and that people aren't being harmed within this community. And I also care about making sure that organizations such as Anarchapulco or any other organization has the tools they need to try to make a success. Even, you have a dispute with Anarchapulco, it doesn't mean Anarchapulco needs to burn down. It just means you need to work out that dispute. And I think that it's so important to see both of those goals simultaneously. And that I think that's like the way that I think and what I do there is why I focus on that. And so, last year, there were some disputes between certain people who had felt that there had been, they'd had differences with Anarchapulco, organizers, leadership, whatever. And I said, hey, I'm just going to volunteer to be a neutral third party to watch this interaction as it goes down. So if you're emailing someone and you're saying, I didn't get paid for this thing, or I'm unhappy about this, that's fine. I want to be transparent. So I want to witness that, so that everyone's on their best behavior as they're trying to resolve this issue, and somebody can reach out with their complaint, and I can see how the complaint is dealt with, and then I can verify that in fact all parties were trying to participate to resolve this issue. And so if somebody goes off the deep end and decides to go bitch on Facebook, I can actually sit there and say, hey, this person has not been following a process or a procedure that is actually here to resolve conflict. They're actually here to make more of it. And so I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for each of us even, and I just happen to be somebody who does it for fun, but for people to be able to witness each other and allow transparency to occur where they can say, I'm here to see this resolution through and work with you. And I think we need more of that and more of calling in each other instead of calling out each other, and being able to then verify through this social verification, through reputation, be able to verify that people are doing their best to try to make this the best community they can, and to make and to solve the problems that communities inevitably have.
Is this on? You can hear me? Okay, check. Hello, my name is Pyasa, and I am a trauma-informed somatic sexologist. And really, a lot of what I do is help people to find safety in their bodies, to recover from some of the poor sexual dysfunction conditioning that we've received around our sexuality. And I was called in by Anarchapulco last year after there were a few assaults that happened here, and to support the people who were involved in that. And yeah, I think a lot of my work has to do with learning about boundaries, how to respect our own boundaries, how to discover our own boundaries, and really how to express them. And so that's why I'm here.
My name is Christof Melchizedek. I've been working in the field of personal transformation and evolution for the last 25 years, starting with the physical vessel, body, and then mind, energy, vibration, energy medicine, and shamanism. So these days I'm working in a few spaces, working with children, with a beautiful project I'll share later, Green School. We have a neo-shamanic school for people who are interested into the healing arts and in the field of leadership. So essentially it's all the same vehicle, though, of understanding human consciousness and how human consciousness evolves and develops and how we grow and evolve spiritually. Thank you. Now, what would be great would be is that, does anyone have any questions that they could sing out, and it could start a topic? So there's a lot of different angles of expertise here, you know, and so if there's any questions that you have been pondering or wondering about for any of the experts here, this would be a great opportunity to, you know, just voice them, and we can do our best to answer.
Yeah, you all have different kind of experiences and so on, and you are the best in your fields, as I think. When you do things in your own personal life, you come into conflict and you have so much knowledge in things, but you see that you're handling it maybe not according to your teachings. How do you get in line and remembering who you actually are, and how you solve it when you come in conflict with what you know?
Is there someone you would really like to ask that to? For anyone? Beautiful.
Well, whenever any of us choose the path of growth and transformation, those kinds of difficulties are guaranteed. Because if you're going to peel away the layers of the dysfunctional programming, or functional for a system that wants slaves, but as we become free, we have to drop those weights. And many people will choose spiritual practices or psychotherapy or self-help books, and those are all paths. So I remember, and I've been at this for 40 years, so I remember every year when I would visit my family, my parents, I would call it, this is going to be a test of my spiritual growth. Because our families, I believe we choose our families so that we can learn lessons. And I would monitor myself because they knew all the buttons to push, and I would see sometimes I failed miserably, sometimes I'd end up in a puddle of tears, you know, because they knew how to get me. And so every year I would visit them, every year I would kind of grade myself like, okay, I did really much better on speaking my truth about this, but I'll give you an example. My partner and I are doing this Tantric Art Project. Editing, he's a painter, and so it's erotic art. Well, I come from the Midwest, and I was raised with a church, you know, traditional upbringing. And so for years, I didn't tell my parents what I was devoting my life to, because sexuality in our household was never discussed, because it just doesn't exist, don't you know? So I remember one year, I'd been 5 years into this project, and you know, it's got erotic art, and we're about to put up a website, and there's going to be erotic art up on the website, and my writing, and so I'm like, I'm going to tell my parents. So I am sitting in the living room, and the television is on, and I'm just like, beads of sweat, but I'm going to tell them what I'm doing. And on the news, it was like 6 o'clock news, it was about the bust of a pornography shop. And my mother is like, discussion between them about how the perverts of the world are, the ruination, as my mother says, that's the ruination of America. So I just was in the sofa like, shrinking, and I shrank. But I came back the next year, and I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to tell them about this Venus and Her Lover Tantric Art Project. So, again, the television never went off in the house. I kept waiting. Okay, so we're seated on, in the living room. And so, Mom and Dad, I want to tell you what I've been devoting the last 6 years of my life to. I am a writer, and I haven't, I've been a poet, and you always thought my poetry was nice. Well, now I'm devoting myself to these messages about man and woman and humanity and where they meet in sexuality. Dead silence. And I had brought a manuscript, part of the manuscript, and I put it on the table. I said, here's the chapter I wrote about the history of men and women. And they just both looked at it, and they looked away, and the manuscript sat there. And they didn't reach for it, they didn't ask any questions, and then I realized, wow, I have been stifling myself for 6 years because I was afraid of offending my parents. And I was always saying, well, if I tell my parents, they'll have heart attacks. Well, so anyway, I leave the manuscript there. They don't touch it. And I'm like, what was I afraid of all this time? I was censoring myself. Well, eventually my father read it, and he came in. I was packing to leave, and he says, I just want to tell you, I said, he hands it back to me, and I said, what'd you think? He goes, you're a very good writer. Okay. He hugs me, and he walks out of the room, and I'm like, okay. So anyway, I get back on the plane. At that time, we were living in Hawaii. I go back to Hawaii. As soon as I get home, I get a phone call. My father had a heart attack. So it was actually true. But I just took it like, okay, his heart is opening. So, these are the kinds of things that happen on the path. And don't mean to hog the mic, but to answer your question in a more serious, somber way, my partner that I did this Tantric Art Project with, we were together for 23 years, and we just separated in September for the highest good of both of us, and we are calling it a conscious uncoupling. Of course, I've been in grief for many months. It's really called right onto the carpet all my beliefs about relationship. Of course, I argued for a minute with existence, like, really? I have to do the whole round of relationship? Couldn't it just be like happily ever after? But so I've just come through extremely difficult passage. And you know what? My heart is more open. I'm stronger now than ever before. I mean, grief took me down for quite some months. But I am more assured in my spiritual identity and my mission on earth than ever, and I am going to be calling that a blessing, as hard as it was.
I have an answer for the way that I process this in a conflict. Or first thing to do is that when you're in this emotional reaction, sometimes, it takes a little bit of time to recognize you're in it. Who recognizes that? You're kind of venting around and, oh shit, I'm in it. So you have to, step one, identify your center. Okay, come back into composure and then go into expansion. You need to distance yourself from the situation and look down on it almost like a detached alien looking down onto the scene, like you're in third position, third party, observing the thing but not being in it. And so what that does is it allows you to remove the emotional charge from the situation. You can see more clearly both parties and all that's going on. Then you start to explore and examine from this detached perspective. What is my thought? What thought am I telling myself about this situation? Then underneath that thought, there's obviously the emotion as well. So what thoughts and emotions do I have? Okay, that's interesting. I was thinking this. You write those down. And then I explore what's underneath that thought and emotion. There has to be a belief. What's this belief? What belief must I have about this situation to make me think these things? And then underneath the belief, this is where we start to become the cosmonaut of your inner space. And this is how you really get to grow. You go underneath that, and I go underneath, and I start to look for any unmet needs that this has been formulated. The belief has come through about an unmet need or a direct trauma or a wound. And I want to come into contact with that because I want to take personal responsibility for my irritation. And trust me, there was plenty as I was going through this evolutionary process. And it's a path. So when we're growing up, our energy centers come online, and they come online at different ages, and each energy center has a corresponding different psychological processing through my sense of safety and survival in the first energy center, my sense of community connection, belonging in the second, and my self-esteem, self-concept. And so what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to explore, what are any unmet needs that have been formulated that this has created this belief? And then from there, I can go underneath that again and say, is there a wound there? And what that allows me to do is it allows me to reverse engineer my own irritation, upset, anger, frustration, and my part in the situation. And then I look to do the inner work, the inner healing work to try to fulfill those unmet needs inside of me. And I recognize that when I change, they change. And so I start by changing myself. And then in that aspect of changing myself, I notice that, the whole thing's dissolved. Oh my goodness, it was me after all. And so I hope that helps, giving you a little sequence and step and process to deal with it.
I think I have a much simpler answer. These are beautiful answers. But for me, I just surround myself with amazing people like them. Because for me, when something comes up, I'm trapped in my own head around it, and it's so much easier to have a reflection. And so I don't hesitate ever to call an expert like them. So even though we're all colleagues, I would have no problems calling any of them and saying, so I'm going through something right now. Would you be willing to work with me, or would you be willing to help support me or hold space for me? And can we chat through that and of course, work out that. But that means that each one of us has to go through life, gets to. Go through life and select the people that we choose to trust as those reflections, so that when these moments come up, I don't want to feel alone in it. So, and I would much rather just reach out to Luis and say, hey man, you got 30 minutes for me? You got an hour for me? And then we get to together connect, and then I get to have the beauty of the depth of his expertise and his knowledge and his wisdom. And then he gets to help me, I hope, wake up something else that's been lying dormant in me. So my short answer is surround yourself with amazing people like them.
Mine is very close to that. So the idea is we begin to heal the moment we feel heard. And you have to have really good quality people where you can bounce the thoughts. And the other person doesn't need to solve your problems. You don't even want that anyway, because you're stealing their destiny, right? So just mirroring, connecting, and sometimes what I do, I even do this with my kids, 15 and 11. What do you see that I don't see? And a lot of times, because we're in despair, we get, our tunnel vision gets smaller. So, okay, I'm struggling. What's happening? And having, the advantage of growing with or raising peaceful parenting style kids is that they're really aware and they're going to call you out on your shit. And I actually ask them to do it because, like, the way I see them also is I am not the boss of you. We are, my mom always said, for a long time, you're going to learn from me, but then I'm going to learn from you. So there is this interesting system. So I do the same with my kids, and they're like, this doesn't seem consistent, they tell me. I'm like, oh, well, okay, thank you. I'll think about that. And my wife's really good at that too. So having a learning partner is really important, because even though you may be at a really high level of psychological integration, sometimes the shit hits the fan anyway.
And I wanted to add to that, hopefully it's a little bit different than everybody else has shared this beautiful wisdom. So I'm a pattern breaker in a long line of incest in my family. And so when I came out with that with my family, with my mother specifically, because she was a part of that line and had never dealt with it herself, she was in denial, and she still really to this day does not want to talk about it. And so I had to learn that I had to reach out to, work with my teachers and my guides and my spiritual community and within myself to process and to heal. And that I couldn't really expect her to acknowledge it, and that I could heal without her acceptance of that. And yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say.
Might as well just finish up. I actually kind of want to build on what Louise said a little bit, because we were talking about when you're raising kids who are peacefully parented, and so they don't have some of the damage that a lot of people deal with. And one of the other aspects of my upbringing was that my parents were peaceful parents, and I have thankfully avoided much of the trauma that comes from growing up in a household where your parents control you or have or control you, or otherwise don't mean to abuse you but kind of do. And it's funny because I like to bring it up as an example. Is my mother and I are very strong personalities. We love the show. My mother is amazing. My dad is amazing. My parents are freaking awesome, and they did a great job raising me. But that doesn't mean that they don't have their own issues and that I haven't developed some of my own. And one of the things is my mother and I are highly logical individuals. We're both really good at identifying, I'm upset about this and I need to step back and all of those things. But I really found that, especially as I was coming into my own in my early 20s, there were these moments in which my mother was like, well, I raised you to be free to do whatever you want, but I kind of hoped it would go differently. There were choices I thought you would make that you didn't. And that's all well and good, but it was a little bit of her issue, whatever. And we had our own disagreements, and some of them were harsher than they needed to be. And I think that we had a really good rapport for dealing with those things really quickly. And so they didn't become huge things. I didn't have to go to therapy or any shit. But I remember being 19 years old and my mother and I having a disagreement about something, and it was definitely triggering some things in her. And even though, and I was feeling very attacked because I was like, oh, you're really triggered about this thing. And I realized that I couldn't be the one to tell her that she was being really triggered about this thing. It wasn't my job to tell her that, because if I told her that, she had to be defensive about it. And so I reached out to a friend of ours, a woman her age, who understood where she was going through, and who actually was literally like a licensed mediator. And I said, I'm having some issues with my mother, and right now I'm going to only exchange emails with her so that we only see written words, and so we can't bitch about each other's tone or anything like that. And I was like, and right now I'd like you to be the person I CC on those emails, and I'd like you to talk to Mom about whatever I say, so that she can have someone to complain to, someone to wrap these things around, and also so she can see what she's missing, and then I can see what I'm missing. And before I would even send the emails, I would ask this person to tell me, what am I missing? Is anything I'm saying kind of attacking her? Because I knew that she needed her own process to go through this thing. And I realized that sometimes when there's two people who are very emotionally connected, it can be great to work on yourself, but how do you help that other person work on themselves when you're both emotionally charged and you can't necessarily work together, and you need to find that secondary, that third party who can then bring about like the ability for someone to mirror onto them and to consider things without being emotionally triggered by the person who's causing those issues for them. And so it's funny because I'd always been mediative myself and always been like that person my friends would call and say, hey, I'm having an issue. But like to actually find the person in my life that I was able to use that for meant that, it was like a couple months of just arguing with my mother and not like a, huge therapy session of I don't talk to my mom. It was just this little thing that needed to get worked out. And I think that overall, I think that when the best things to do is to check ourselves. And I think that applies to everything we're talking about here, is the idea that to check ourselves, to check what's going on in us, and also be able to call a friend and say, I need a reality check right now. Am I too tunnel visioned in this? Am I too emotionally impacted by this? Can you help me see from above, see the at 30,000 feet what's going on? And I think that really that's what it comes down to, is being able to have those lifeboats outside to give you perspective. And I think perspective is really what it comes down to. So. Benny, you got something for us?
I don't have a question, but I have the microphone for whoever does.
Oh, there you go.
Great.
Questions are good. It starts the ball rolling.
Aloha, everyone in the room. If you see me running around with the boombox, feel free to join and smile. I want to talk about unconditional love. Has anyone in the room heard of meditation? Okay, you can check that out at another time. I want to be really efficient with your time. There's a quote I want to share. Love people for who you are, not for who they are. I think that if we can put ourselves in a state of unconditional love for others, we can address conflict much more thoughtfully. And I'd love to ask each of you what hacks you use to remind yourself to unconditionally love people in your surroundings, maybe even strangers. And if you disagree that unconditional love is an avenue to more happiness in your life, I'd love for you to expand on that as well.
Great, thank you. Beautiful. For myself, I love to wake up in the morning and fill myself with unconditional love as the first shower I take in the morning. And then as I exit the door, I feel fulfilled and that flowing outside of me. And I never feel anything as, I don't have to admit. And it was a process to get to that point where I feel fulfilled with love on the inside. Because there was a long time where I used to feel love was on the outside of me. So then I would set up expectations of how people used to have to behave in order for me to feel that love. And of course that only led to disappointment and then blame. And I very quickly learned that, unconditional love within, if I could achieve that, then I wouldn't need other people's either opinions or the way they behaved. And so it was a process. There were a few shortcuts to get to that. There was definitely some psychedelic medicines involved. There was definitely a lot of healing sessions. There was a lot of therapy and touchstones and relationships and triggers to get to that point. But the anchor point of it is a morning ritual, a morning practice of self-love.
Who wants to go next?
I've got the mic. I have a unique take on this, and I actually was just sitting here inside of my head going, do I say it?
I'm so excited.
I don't believe in unconditional love at all, and I don't believe in it whatsoever. And for me, I see it as a farce, as a fantasy in my head, and that is if unconditional love is that of the soul, a limitlessness. I chose to come into a body. I chose to have what some people call the human condition. Well, if I chose to have the human condition and I'm in a body with a mind that's got lessons that I've learned and lessons I haven't learned, and we're all trying to gain this unconditional love thing, I've seen a lot of people torture themselves with not getting to that, whatever that is. And then when a moment comes up inside of one's experience where one is not their shiniest, brightest self, they've got this comparison point of I'm not unconditionally loving me, and then by saying to that to them, it turns into this big thing in my head. And instead I just go, we're having a conditional experience, and that means that I get a chance to learn. So then I get an opportunity to say, what is the next condition of becoming I get to move into when I learn and I educate myself through listening to any one of these beautiful beings or reading a book or any of the things that they all said. But I don't set the goal to be something unconditional, because from my background, that's not how the brain works. The brain likes to have something that it can aim at. Well, as soon as you give yourself an intention, whether you're aware of it or not, those are conditions. Because there's everything inside of the goal that you want, but then there's also all of the things that are not inside of the goal that you want, and I look at those as conditions. So for me, I don't aim at that. I just aim to seek and grow. Now, that doesn't mean I'm right, but I don't know if there is a right or a wrong. There's only what's right for me. And then that helps me to look at another human being and go, their condition, their human condition is not the human condition I'm having at this moment in time. And that is what grants me the ability to identify the virtues that they're practicing, whether that's certitude, accountability, acceptance, faith, any one of them. And I go, interesting, I could stand to learn and grow around patience by witnessing it. So I know that's maybe not a PC answer, but I am an anarchist, so don't always necessarily need to have a PC answer, so that's my answer.
I just want to have a little quick piece for Johnny there, is that love isn't something that lives in the head, that you work out with your mind. It's something that you feel. And it's all something that we can cultivate, and we can all strive towards feeling it. And it's quite often we get so caught up in the head. And the feeling centers of love is something that you feel. You don't think love, you feel it.
Get out of my head, Johnny.
We're fighting over the mic.
So as he was saying that, and before that, I was like cringing inside because I don't want to be the one disagreeing, but yeah, and this is a place of contention all the time. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. And all the things he said, ultimately, there is the recognition of I am another you and you are another me. But if at a certain level you're being a complete obtuse person, I am not going to necessarily just love you, whatever. Like, I am going to distance myself. But some people will argue, well, but you can still love them and send them on. No, I mean, no. So I mean, I literally have no hate in my heart, not even for Henry Kissinger. So that says a lot, right? So I just I am in peace in myself and love in myself, and I am connected. And so it's kind of like electricity, or the internet. You go from dial-up to DSL to fiber optic. I'm like fiber optic most times, so like I just kind of like distance myself because it could be toxic, it could be dangerous. But I honestly don't. And that's just in my current state of awareness, I won't say. I'm not suggesting that this is a fact. Like, that's just how I currently understand it.
I've shared this before, maybe even at Anarchapulco, but Osho talked about that love is a state of relaxation as opposed to a state of contraction, yeah? So I think that some of what we're talking about here is staying in relationship with somebody, but not necessarily about love, right? Does that make sense? Like, I think, yeah? Just want to say that.
With my Venusian tendencies, I've got 9 out of 12 aspects of my astrological chart ruled by Venus. There was no way I was going to escape being a loving person. And I do believe in unconditional love because it is my natural state. Therefore, what I had to learn about is what the Buddhists call idiot compassion. In that, because of my naturally unconditionally loving state, I would accept behavior that wasn't okay. I would have squishy boundaries, or I would give to, say, someone who had an addiction that did not need any more quarter. So in my learning about idiot compassion, it's that sometimes our most compassionate thing is to put a boundary and say, I am not dealing with you until you get your shit together. So that was very helpful for me, to not be just an idiot about my compassion, because I was. I still am. Yes, I can still love them, but I don't have to be in their world, right? Or sometimes tough love, especially with friends who have dealt with addiction or are in addiction, that's the most loving thing I can do. Or just draw my lines. It's about boundaries. Not that okay, that's all I need to say about that. But one final hack is that years ago, I met a friend who told me what he did to keep up his compassionate heart, keep it open. And he said, whenever I'm dealing with someone, I just look at them and I say, they're doing the best they can. So given all, we're all raised in a dominator system. It's a trauma-based mind control system. Everyone's wounded. And I truly believe in the triumph of the human spirit. So if a person is acting out like we all do, I'll just say, okay, they're just doing the best they can with what they got.
Is being compassionate the same as experiencing unconditional love? Is that like how, because how do you say? I'm unclear.
Okay, what I would say is that unconditional love is a field that you hold, and compassion goes, it can also be what you're feeling, but I consider it more as compassion in action, right? Though I could even do that from a distance with someone.
So I'm going to try to hit this and be somewhere in between here. I believe in unconditional love because I unconditionally love myself, and I don't fucking unconditionally love anyone else. Because here's the deal. I was raised with a deep, deep, deep understanding of my own self, my own person, my own love, my own who I am, and that I have to be the best I can be because no one else can be me. And I remember when I was like 12 or something, I was on an AOL message board of all places, and I said something about how someday I would find someone that I would unconditionally love. And one of my mother's friends was on that board and said something about how you should have conditions about the person that you're building a life with. And we're talking about different kinds of love here, so let's recognize that. But I remember being like, well, what do you mean? And they're like, well, if he abuses you, if he hurts you, if he, these are things that you should have conditions to your love. You should not involve yourself with somebody who doesn't love you and treat you with that love. And that love is a verb. Love is a verb, and the fact is, if people aren't behaving in a way that is loving, then you have no obligation to unconditionally love them back. However, I love me, and I love the world that I want, the world that I exist in, and that's just me. That's my bubble of who I involve myself with, and what my world. What is included in my world, and the people that are included in my world, and that means that I apply things like compassion in that I love the idea of other people and of helping other people be the best that they can be. And therefore, I will often, when dealing with people that are trying my patience as human beings, I will continue to have compassion for them and try to find, their best way forward, because that makes it better for me. And so, if I'm dealing with an issue with somebody, I just remember, hey, I love me, so I don't have to put up with particular behaviors or things that are harming me. But simultaneously, I will, when I have that energy, be able to give some energy to try to bring people to a different place and hopefully make it so. I want a world in which everyone has compassion for each other, and when everyone is trying the best they can, you never know what kind of battles someone is fighting behind the scenes, right? And I want to make sure that I'm respectful of that. But it's It's debatable as to whether or not that's a love of someone else unconditionally, or if that's just a love of me and the world that I want to live in, and what I'm trying to create from my reality and my existence. So there we go. I just tried to like put it all together. Anyone else?
Another question? Yeah.
We got 10 whole minutes, guys. Come on.
Hello, beautiful people. Like a lot of people here, I probably struggle with withholding my gifts and feeling pain and trauma from not fully giving my gifts to the world, and then experiencing trauma. Maybe it's from conditioning that I've had, as Becca was talking about. And I had an epiphany last night that fearlessly sharing our gifts with the world is the fastest way to personal and collective healing. And I was wondering if you could comment on that.
I went first last time.
We all have answers.
Yeah, we all have answers.
I actually have the least answer for this one, so you guys go ahead.
Okay. I have studied different spiritual traditions, and in Buddhism there's the concept of Dharma, which is you could call it the great work, or why we're here, right? Or it's also known as the law, like natural law. And when you look at your life and look at what is the things, the activities that give you the greatest joy, those are like little arrows saying, this is part of your Dharma. Because when our heart is open, it leads us into the great work of healing, and then it leads us into our work in the world. And it will, because we live in an unnatural, imposed structure, it's going to be weird to society. We'll probably have to pay some kind of social price, either literally financially be penalized or socially ostracized or shunned by our family, or because when you follow your heart, there's really, it's a good muscle to strengthen, because that's the deepest joy. And when we are alive, come alive, and doing the things that bring us joy, because I happen to notice that human beings are actually loving beings by nature, we turn out wanting to help others. It's like, wow, I get so high. I mean, like Christof and I were doing a workshop, the pre-retreat, and we were really working hard in this retreat. And we were giving the highest of our gifts, and there's transformation happening in the room. I mean, I was just so high. At the end of each day of that pre-retreat, I had to okay, I got to take a bath in lavender, and I got to calm down, because it's such the highest high. Because not only am I doing what I love, but by doing what I love, it's sparking other people to go into doing what they love. And in terms of being part of a movement, that's how that gives us the advantage over the dominator elites. I mean, they got the monetary system, the military, the police state, the schooling, blah. They've got all of this infrastructure. But we have our hearts. And as we come alive and join with others, we have synergy. So now we are 1 times billions, right? That can happen. And that's what leads me forward, because it's the power of love and the power of us fulfilling our missions that changes the world, in my opinion.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. It reminds me of a beautiful quote by Marcel Frost. No, not Marcel Frost. It goes like this. Howard Thurman. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and go and do that. Because what the world really needs is more people that have come alive. Yeah. So beautifully shared. I mean, not much else other than to say, I think you nailed it. That was it. Just when we follow our gifts, It's our longing, what we're here to do in this lifetime. You know, and you enter something known as coherence when you love what you do, and you're doing what you love, and you're being who you're here to be. That is a field of coherence which aligns with the natural laws of this matrix. Synchronicity brings towards you these higher flow states, and you go onto your path in a non-linear fashion. What happens is that there are shortcuts through synchronicity that the divine presence brings towards you through this coalescing energy and the intelligence and the field and the space between us all. And that is the key to everything. Once you are clear on direction that is encompassing your gifts, all you need to have then is focus and then dedication to your path by entering into the state of love. And that is the highly organizing field of coherence that brings synchronicity and opportunities towards you. Here's to all of our gifts and all of your gifts. May they shine brightly. Aho.
For a long time, well, let me rephrase that. I've noticed after, I guess, 15 years of doing this work that there's only two options. Like, you have free will to do what you're here to do, or you have free will to be miserable. And there's no other way. Like, if you don't follow your heart, you're going to have a bad time. So that doesn't mean that following your heart is going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. It's going to be probably just as freaking hard, but you're going to be lit up in the sense of, like, with your heart open. And if you have a why, you can withstand any what. You're going to be marching through hell and singing, you know, and you're going to fall down and you're going to come back up and, you know, let's keep going. So those are the two options. And whenever you choose to not follow, you start just kind of doing this, closing your heart, you know, getting calcified, and it gets fucking hard to come back out of that. So, and if you follow your passion, if you follow your path, you're still going to, like, say, oh, this is kind of hard sometimes, and, like, maybe I shouldn't do it because it's hard. So you keep doing this. So one time in San Pedro's ceremony back in March of 2011, I remember they showed me that a lot of times we just do the work and we focus just on the actual activity that we're doing, and it closes us. But the reality is we're not here to the activity. The activity is just a means of, we are here to be present and to be able to, you know, empower one another and to open our hearts and to explore that. So a lot of times if we just focus on the actual activity, we're missing the point. So 70% of life is not getting in your own way. It's just feeling the little pools of like the universe and just being aware of those things. And, like, I mean, should you know, like, magic just happens. I mean, I'm a complete, you know, scientific method kind of guy, but there's things I cannot explain. Like, I voice something out and 2 days later it's there. And I'm like, and my wife just looks at me, is like, did it again. I'm like, I don't know, bro. Like, so, like, shit, like, if you're aligned with your purpose and you have, like, a clean desire, you know, the universe conspires in your favor. So a lot of times people say they have paranoia. I have pronoia. I feel like everybody's out there to help me. And that, like, just my perspective in that makes my experience in life way easier and better. Like, I still have to go through the ringer. It's a shitstorm sometimes, most times, actually. But it's kind of fun because, like, you're given a lot of cool things. So, you know, like, both equally heavy weights, you know? So
I think you were talking about the trauma that comes up, you know, and so many of us have this core wound of, I'm not good enough. And that's really so much of what stops us. And I guess really looking at that and understanding that that was just some of the programming that we received, as Christof was talking about, between the year, you know, up to the age of 7. That is what so many, almost all of us have that one. And, you know, really deciding what voice that we want to listen to and how long we want to listen to it. Thank you.
45 seconds, okay. That's easy-ish. There was a guy named Jose who was a garbage man that used to live in my neighborhood. And Jose was definitely doing a job that I wouldn't say he would call his gift at all, by any stretch of the imagination. But I do remember that something shifted in him. And then one day he started doing the garbage, picking up all the, just started to come out every time Jose came into the neighborhood. But when I asked Jose about what he wanted to do with his life, he said exactly what I'm doing. And it changed my perspective on everything, literally. Because the majority of my day is made, I go to the bathroom, I make food, I take somebody's bags for them. That's not my, if I sit down and go, that's not my gift. But it is the gift I get to give in that moment. So it may not be this gift I have perceived somewhere in my beingness, but my beingness, to continue with what you said, is that presence. So the fact that I get to pick this up, or I get to take away the trash, or I get to grab this thing, or I get to compliment someone, for me, that's all of those in-between moments also get to be gifts because I choose to look at them like that. So that is the gift I get to give.
Ditto. There we go. I just, because I'm the only one who didn't comment on this, that would be pretty much what I would say, is even if you can't present your gift the way that you want to present at any given time, you still have so many opportunities to add some flair to your life in a way that brings out your gifts. That's all. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We appreciated it. We're all around. You can talk to us.
Oh, we wanted to announce that in 2 hours, Pyasa and I are doing a special Valentine's Day event in the family stage. It is a paid event. We're doing a Tantric Puja. We're going to be doing connection exercises and kind of a ceremonial celebration of love. You're all invited.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day, guys.
Yeah, please come join us. And did you say you're supposed to buy tickets online? Please. Oh, you can buy them at the door. So please come join us. It's going to be a really beautiful ceremonial celebration. And I missed my main stage speech, which because I was unwell. I'm just getting better. I'm better now. And it will be on Saturday at 5:10 p.m. right here. And the title of my speech is Pleasure, Reclaiming Your Birthright, where I'm going to talk a lot about trauma and all of those things that hold us back from embodying our pleasure and how we can reclaim it. So please join me and spread the word, because it's not on the schedule now. It's planned, but not on the schedule.
Thanks, everybody.